A migrant domestic worker will be charged tomorrow with the murder of a 73-year-old man in Bishan. China doubles down on its dynamic zero-COVID policy, saying it's trying to run faster than the virus. Badminton player KEAN is the Straits Times' Athlete of the Year for 2021. Congratulations, KEAN. Hello, you're watching The Big Story with me, Olivia Quay. Remember to subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss an episode. A 49-year-old foreign domestic worker has been arrested for the alleged murder of a 73-year-old man in Bishan. Investigations are ongoing. Here's what the police are saying. At about 8:50 p.m. last night, they were alerted to the death at a residential unit along Bishan Street 23. When they arrived, officers found the man lying motionless inside, and he was pronounced dead by paramedics. The maid works for the man's household, and she will be charged in court tomorrow. If convicted, she faces the death penalty. Overseas, in a clear indication that China will not be loosening its tight COVID-19 restrictions anytime soon, the National Health Commission says the country will continue with more mass tests and targeted lockdowns as it's trying to, quote, run faster than the virus. According to the Commission at a press conference today, China's dynamic zero-COVID policy has been successful and is the best choice to maintain social and economic development. Officials quick to also stress that dynamic zero does not mean zero infections. Rather, the essence of this approach is early detection and quick response measures to stop the continuous spread of the virus. Here to take this further is the Straits Times' China correspondent Danson Cheong, who attended today's press conference in Beijing. So Danson, did the National Health Commission address the ongoing issues as more Chinese cities see COVID-19 flare-ups?
Thanks, Olivia. You know what they did? They talked about how there were issues, with getting medical help in cities like Shanghai, and also how the lockdowns have stopped people from getting reliable access to food and basic necessities. They outline, some measures like making sure that even, if cities come under lockdown, there should be a flow of essential personnel like medical workers, logistics, delivery riders and drivers and so forth. But I think what was really, what stood out for me this morning was the fact that, it was really, despite this public unhappiness towards this zero COVID policy, it really was a really full-throated defense, so to speak, of China's current approach. Officials were talking about how if China were to sort of loosen restrictions, it would mean that a large number of elderly children, pregnant women, would get infected, and they were talking about how this caused large amounts of fatalities within quite a short period of time. And they also talked about how despite the very heavy-handed measures, that this approach was necessary because it helped to sort of preserve the ability for the rest of the country to carry on with their economic activity and so forth.
Well, the Commission also saying today, Danson, that almost 90% of China's total population is fully vaccinated. So then it brings about the question on most people's minds. Why then is China sticking to its dynamic zero-COVID strategy?
Well, I see two reasons for this. It's true, the vaccination rates here are quite high. But if you drill down deeper into the numbers, when it comes to people above the age of 80, for example, this number comes all the way down to just over 50% or so. So a large number of very old people are not vaccinated, and that's a big issue for China. There are some projections, that sort of estimate that China could face something like 2 million deaths if it does, sort of loosen its COVID-19 policies and restrictions. So China here is trying to balance the health of its most vulnerable parts of the population, the elderly, with ensuring that economic activity can go on, so to speak. But the second, I think, equally important reason is that it's also political. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sort of touted the ability of the Chinese system to battle COVID, to be able to tamp down infections. In China here, it's often described that China has certain advantages in doing these things, managing to control infections, by doing mass tests and extensive contact tracing, because the government here is so big. In some ways, I think Mr. Xi has sort of tied his own personal legitimacy to the success of zero COVID. And this year is a particularly sensitive year for him because he is widely expected to seek a third term in power. So for that reason, I think China is not going to deviate from zero COVID at this point in time.
Two fair points that you just brought up, Danson. But if China continues with this dynamic zero COVID strategy, what repercussions will the country and the rest of Asia face?
Well, I think if you just look at what's happening in Shanghai, I think we can expect greater logistics delays. Shanghai is one of China's biggest shipping ports. So, and the lockdown there essentially has crippled the flow of goods into and outside of the country. I was speaking with a friend who imports beef into China, and he's told me that his frozen beef basically has been sitting in Shanghai at the port for over a month now. So there going to be big repercussions here. I think there's some figures that sort of show that container volume has dropped by about a third in Shanghai. So I think we can expect in the rest of the world logistics delays and within China as well.
Many thanks to Danson Cheong, our China correspondent in Beijing. Well, the capital has closed more gyms, malls, cinemas and residential blocks. Its Chaoyang district, which accounts for the biggest share of cases in the current outbreak, is on its last of 3 rounds of testing today for its 3.5 million residents. And over in Shanghai, where nearly half of its population are now allowed to leave their homes following a lockdown imposed at the beginning of the month. These some 12 million residents live in lower risk areas that have gone 2 weeks without a positive case. In other news, Don Lee, the sole candidate running for the top job in Hong Kong, has unveiled his election manifesto. He says he will lead a government that will deliver results, unify different parts of society, and open a new chapter for the city. He's set to replace Carrie Lam as chief executive on July the 1st. The war in Ukraine is a defining moment for small states like Singapore. Speaking at the United Nations, Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says small states must speak out against violations of international law whenever and wherever they occur.
Small states like us are most vulnerable when the multilateral system based on international law is replaced by the idea that might makes right. Unfortunately, therefore, Russia's aggression against the Ukraine has been a grim reminder for all states that we cannot take peace and security for granted. For small states, the war in Ukraine is a defining moment. It requires a clear and principled position. The violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of one country by another country is simply not acceptable in this day and age.
Each year, the Straits Times' Athlete of the Year award celebrates the sporting achievements of an individual or a team. And I'm delighted to report that badminton player Loh Kian Yew is our Athlete of the Year for 2021. He received his award right here at ST's broadcast studio. And afterwards, he relived the moment he became Singapore's first ever badminton world champion.
right when I got the match point right, I was actually very happy. In fact, too happy. That's why I lost the next 2 points, because I kind of already celebrated in my mind that I'm going to win the game, and then so I tried to calm myself down and get back into the game again. And then, of course, he made a mistake at the 21-20. And then after that, the last shot, I was quite surprised that he didn't take the last flick of mine. I'm glad that it was all over and I can finally be happy, because throughout the whole week, I have been containing my happiness of breaking through each game. So after that final shot, I just let it all out.
With more is sports editor Lee Yulin. Yulin, deciding a winner every year is always very tough, but what a year KEAN has had, right?
Truth be told, Olivia, I would say that it was a year of two halves for KEAN. He had a very humbling start, exiting early in his first few events of 2021. And even at the Olympics, I didn't think that he stood out. But then it all changed when he went to train with Olympic champion Victor Axelsen for a month in Dubai. Now, from what I understand, it was a high-level training camp where he was able to engage with quality sparring opponents from around the world, day in and day out. I think that did wonders for his game and for his confidence. And when he took to the circuit again in the second half of the year, he was a different player. Not just in terms of talent, because he's always had bags of it, but also belief and focus. And from there, it spawned his momentum for the rest of the year.
Well, for this year, the rest of 2022 will be extremely busy with the SEA Games, Commonwealth Games and Asian Games on top of the Badminton World Federation schedule. So Yulin, can you share more on KEAN's plans to stay at the top of his game?
Indeed, I can. The key word here is consistency, as KEAN himself has admitted. Now, sport is littered with one-hit wonders. Tennis players who have won one Grand Slam, golfers who have won one major, teams who have won just one league title in decades. If KEAN wants more success, then he needs to find ways to train and play at a high level all the time. I am glad that he is mature enough to realize this, and also modest enough to acknowledge that despite the fact he is a world champion, there are still parts of his game that need improving. He's still hungry, and that is a really good sign.
Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with our sports editor, Lee Yulin. You can watch the ST Athlete of the Year Awards ceremony on our YouTube channel. There's even a little quiz with KEAN that will be fun to check out. All three of Singapore's banks reporting a 10% drop in first quarter net profit, hit by disruptions to global supply chains and concerns over higher inflation. DBS, the largest of the three, says it will benefit significantly from interest rate hikes in the coming months, which will help offset lower fees from its wealth management business. 11 Singapore bars are on the list for this year's Asia's 50 Best Bars list, including Jigger and Pony at Amara, Singapore, which retained its second spot. And these are the other local bars on the awards list. Mobar catapulting from 45th last year to 8th. One-year-old Republic debuting in 12th, along with Analog in 37th. Hey, you can head to any one of these places to kickstart your long weekend. The Straits Times this week launched a new series called Conversations on the Future, hosted by US Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh. Now, the videos focus not on current issues, but on broader and larger long-term issues and trends. Take a look.
Conversations on the Future is an attempt to rise above the noise of the daily news cycle and focus on fundamental issues of a more existential nature that we should be focusing on and preparing for what is the world of the future going to hold for us. To kick things off, I speak with one of Asia's most eminent scholars and historians, Wang Gangwu, on the current state of global affairs and how civilizations and the direction they are heading in shape our world and our future.
This is one of the few things I can say about the past. They have shown that the human beings are very capable of making mistakes and very capable of correcting them, but not always wise enough to avoid them. So once you accept that, then you shouldn't be afraid of the future. You just simply say that you must be alert constantly watch out for what you can learn, how it relates to the past. And if you know enough about the past, that will help you. It can actually alert you to some of the possibilities.
The first episode is on our YouTube channel, where you can also find more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay, and see you soon on The Big Story. Enjoy your weekend.